Alright guys, so in this video we're going to talk about JavaScript variables, arrays, and objects. But before we get into that, I want to show you the different ways that we can output data using JavaScript. So we have just an index.html file with our basic HTML structure, and what we're going to do is in the body, we're going to go down to the bottom right above the ending body tag and put in a script tag. Alright, and in here we can put our JavaScript. Alright, so I just want to show you the different ways that we can output. So what we'll be mostly using is console.log. And what that'll do is it will log whatever we want to the console. So let's just say hello world and save it. And then if we run this in the browser, you won't see anything here, but if you hit F12, I know it's F12 in Chrome and Firefox. Those are really the only two browsers I use. But I know that IE and Safari also have tools that you can use. Alright, and you can see that if you make sure you click the console tab and it's giving us hello world. Okay, so whatever we log out in the console will show down here. So that's what we'll be using for the most part. But there are some other things we can do. We could use document.write. Okay, so write is a method that we can run from the document object, and whatever we put in here, let's go ahead and save it, reload, and that'll output on the screen, okay, wherever we put the script tags. So if we were to say up here, if we write test, and down here we'll write testing, reload, you can see that hello world is in the middle of those two. So wherever we were to put the script tags. But this isn't really a good way to output data. You don't want to have script tags all over the place. Alright, but you can do that. Another way that we could output data is through an alert. Okay, so we have the window object, and then that has an alert method or function. We'll say hello world, reload, and you can see we get this pop-up, this alert box with hello world. All right, and you actually don't even need to use window dot. You could just do alert, and that'll do the same thing. All right, and then the last method of output I'm going to show you is inner HTML. So with this, what we would do is, let's say we have a div. We'll give it an ID of test, and then down here we could say document dot get element by ID. And the element's ID is test, and then we can say dot inner HTML equals, and then whatever we want, we'll say hello world. If we go and we reload, now you can see wherever we put this div with the ID of test, it's going to output hello world. Alright, so those are the main methods of output. So next thing we're going to do is move on to variables, and we touched on variables very, very briefly in the last video. So what we can do is set a variable with the keyword var. So if we were to say var x, that's going to create a variable called x. Now if we go and we console.log x, you'll see that it comes up undefined, okay, because we didn't assign it to a value. So what we can do is say x equals 5, and then when we reload we'll get 5. Okay, and of course, to make this a little shorter, we could just say var x equals 5, just like that. Alright, now we can also do simple arithmetic. If we say var y equals 10, and basically we can do some algebra. So if we console log x plus y, that gives us 15. Okay, so those are numbers or integers that we're assigning to those variables. We can also do strings. So if we were to say var person equals John Doe, and then we'll console log person, okay, we get John Doe. So this is a string, and a string has to be wrapped in quotes, and it can be either single or double quotes. Now let's say we want to use this in a sentence, in a string that we console log. So we'll say, remember strings have quotes, we'll say my name is. And if we were to go like that, you can see we get my name is person, and that's not what we want. To make this an actual variable, we have to concatenate that onto this string. So to do that, we use a plus sign. Okay, so now if we reload, you can see it says my name is John Doe. Alright, now if we want to assign multiple variables on one line, we could do that. So let's say var a equals 1, and then we could put a comma, b equals 2, c equals 3, and then if we were to console log b, reload, and you can see we get 2. Okay, so it saves a little bit of space. So variables are a pretty simple aspect of JavaScript. So now let's talk about arrays. And arrays are basically, they allow you to have multiple values within one variable. So let's do an example here. We'll create a variable called animals, and we're going to set that to a set of square brackets, which represents an array, and then we're going to put some values in here. We'll say dog, cat, and these are strings, but of course you could put numbers, and let's say horse. Okay, so we have this array of animals, and we can actually console log that. And down here you'll see we have our array. If we click that arrow, it'll show us each individual value. Now if we want to target one of these, like let's say we just want cat, then we can say console log animals, open up a set of brackets, put in 1, reload, and now you can see we get cat. Alright, the reason that it's 1 and not 2 is because arrays are 0 based. So this would be 0, 1, 2. Okay, and adding to this is also really easy. We could say animals, and we know that this is it'll be the third index, 0, 1, 2, 3, and set that to, let's say, cow. Alright, now if we console.log animals, you'll see that cow is now included on the end. Now this is one way to create an array. We can also use the new keyword. So I'm just going to show you. This would be the way I would suggest, but just to give you an alternate way, we could say animals equals new array, and then a set of parentheses, and then we can say dog, cat, horse. Okay, we reload, we get the same thing. Okay, so just another way to do it, but I would suggest doing it this way. Now another way to add something to an array is to use the push method. So we can say animals dot push, and in here we'll say pig. Okay, now if we console log it, you'll see that pig is now added to the end. So there's a few different ways to do some of these things. Now this push method is available to us because an array is actually an object. Okay, just about everything can be considered an object in JavaScript. So it has its own set of methods and properties. Okay, so this is a method that pushes onto the array. Alright, now we also have, for instance, length, which is a property. So let's say console.log animals.length, and what that gives us, if we reload, you can see it gives us a 5. It gives us the number of items in an array. So we start out with 3, we added cow, which is 4, and then we added pig, which is 5. Okay, another method that's available to us is sort. So if we were to paste that in, and we'll say animals dot sort, and that's a method or a function, so it needs parentheses. Reload, and now you can see that it gives us the array, but it's now sorted in alphabetical order. Now we also have associative arrays, where we can actually define the index to be something other than just a number. So let me just comment that out. And what we'll do here is, let's say we'll create var person, and we'll set it to an empty array, and then we can add indexes to it. So we'll say person name, we'll set that to John Doe. Okay, actually we don't want the var. And let's say person age, and we'll set that to 35. And then let's say city, and we'll set that to New York, and this should be lowercase. Okay, so now we have this person. This is an associative array because instead of just using 0, 1, 2, we're using actual words. Okay, so if we want, we can say console.log, and let's just log person. And now when we reload, you can see that each value basically has its own key. Okay, that's a set of key value pairs. If we want just the name, we can say person name and reload, and we get the name. So this works pretty much how objects work, okay, and that's what we're going to look at next. So to create an object, let's create one called car, and we'll set it to have a list of properties of key value pairs, and they're going to be wrapped this time in curly braces. Alright, so we'll say make will be Ford, and we'll have model Mustang, and year we'll say 1964. Alright, so we now have this car object. Let's go ahead and console log it. Okay, we reload, and you can see it tells us it's an object, and it gives us the different fields, okay? Just like an associative array. And if we want to access a certain property, we could simply do dot. We'll do dot make, reload, and we get Ford. Okay, so instead of using the square brackets here, like we did with the array, we just use dot. All right, now we can also have an array of objects, which is something that you probably work with a lot, especially when dealing with different APIs. When you fetch data from a server, a lot of times it'll come back as JSON syntax, which is basically an array of objects. So let's create a variable called cars and set it to a set of brackets, and then in these brackets we'll have objects. Okay, so I'm just going to grab what we have right here, paste that in. Okay, so that represents one car, and then we'll copy this. Make sure you put a comma there, and then we'll just change this up. We'll say Impala. We'll say 78. This one, we'll say Toyota Camry 2015. Alright, so now what we want to do is log this. Okay, and then down here you'll see that we get these three objects. Click on these arrows, and that'll give us each of the fields. Alright, so that is an array of objects. If we want to access a certain one, we can go ahead and use an index. Let's say 1. Remember, there's 0 base, so this would be 1, the Chevy. Reload, that gives us the object. If we want to focus in on one of the properties, we could say dot model, and that gives us Impala. Okay, so we can easily access any of these objects and their properties. Alright, so we're going to stop here for now, and I'll see you in the next video.